Okay, I've been doing a little word study of the Bible and going through um, and trying to understand what a lot of these church words mean in plain English. Um, so, firstly, I started with the three terms for like bad things. It's sin, iniquity, and trespass. So obviously the popular thing in the modern culture is to be like, oh well, sin just means to miss the mark. It turns out that that's actually true. That's a true thing. Um, Now iniquity means crookedness, crookedness. So it's actually very evocative when you just use a word like that, like twistedness, crookedness. Um, and then trespass is literally just overstepping. You step over the line, you cross the line, right? So there's sort of a sin and trespass are sort of similar. I think it's a matter of like trespass is a type of sin, but not all sin is a full on trespass. It's sort of it reminds me of like venial and mortal sin in the Catholic world. And then iniquity seems to be like an overall category of not just choosing the wrong thing and making mistakes, missing, but it's also everything that comes with that. So like if you do a bad thing and you experience bad things because of that, it's like a whole system of crookedness. And a lot of times um, the punishment for crookedness is crookedness itself, so you're experiencing that which is a punishment for it. um, the other category of words that I was looking up was bear, or no, sorry, it was forgive, atone, and expiate. So I wanted to understand what these mean in plain English. So to forgive is actually it actually means to bear. I think the first instance of this was with Cain, who killed Abel. But then the next instance of it, I think, was uh, the water bearing up the ark. So it's like to forgive someone means to bear them up, to lift them up, to carry their burden for them. So if it's like, please forgive me, you're asking that other person to bear you, okay, carry you. Like I bore up my eyes, I lifted up my eyes. Um, and so I mean that's just very evocative as well. Um, Atone, obviously, atone means to cover. I'll never understand why we made up these words for these concepts because it's so much more evocative and explanatory when we use the word cover. Um, in the, I think in the first instance of this word, um, it says that Noah covered the ark in tar or in pitch to like seal it up. So it's literally like Noah didn't atone the ark. He covered the ark, and that informs how they thought about what atonement was. It's a covering, right? Kafar, and the kaparet, the mercy seat, is the place at which covering takes place, the place of covering, right? Um, yeah, and obviously in Revelation, it talks about people being covered by Jesus or wearing the white robes of being covered. Now expiate's a bizarre word. Why would we use this word? Um, it literally just means to remove. Um, by the way, I matched up the Greek and the Hebrew. So like um, I went through and I looked up the first instances these were used in Hebrew, but then I cross-referenced and I said, okay, now how did the Septuagint Greek of the Old Testament translate this Hebrew term? And then that Greek term, I looked at how it was used in the New Testament as well. So, expiate, right? It means remove. So like when Peter chopped off the guard's ear in the New Testament, he expiated the guard's ear. He removed the ear, okay? Now, in Hebrews, when it talks about, sin being, the blood of goats and bulls being unable to expiate sin. So that's that word. It was unable to remove sin. So seemingly the blood of the animals atoned, it covered sin, but it didn't remove sin. Now, the next one is sacrifice and offering, these two things. So, sacrifice means slaughter. That's literally all it means. So when you think of it that way, it actually becomes a lot more like less creepy and weird, because you read it and you're like, oh, okay, well, in these ancient times, people are going to be slaughtering animals no matter what. So if they're going to slaughter the animal in Israel, they're going to do it for the purpose of, pleasing God, right? Offering it to God. It's like when Paul says, everything you do, whether you drink or eat, do it to the glory of God, or whatever the verse was. It's like, it was like that back then too, in Israel, where like, if you're going to slaughter an animal, do it to the glory of God, right? So it wasn't like sacrifice was like, oh, there wasn't a division between slaughter and sacrifice. It wasn't like, oh, I'm going to go kill a cow and we're going to have it for dinner. And then like you put on a hood and you get all creepy and you're like, I'm going to go sacrifice a cow. No, like it was the same thing. It was literally just, are you going to do this for no reason, or are you going to do it to the glory of God? Right? Now, offering is easy. It's just a gift. It's a gift. So I forget what verse it is, but it says Jesus is our gift and slaughter. Okay. Now, obviously, when you slaughtered the thing, you'd sprinkle the blood, right? So the purpose wasn't necessarily in the killing, but it was being used for a cleansing purpose, right? So anyway, our gift and slaughter. Now, how about grace? What is grace? This is an interesting one. The first time grace is used is in reference to Noah. The Hebrew word for grace is HN, the consonants HN, and Noah's name is NH. It sort of gives a hint. It's a play on words, but it gives a hint as to and the first time this word is used, it's in reference to Noah. So it really gives us a hint as to what this word is. Everyone is like, in the medieval era, it's like, oh, grace is like this substance. It's like, you're filled with grace, right? And it might be, I don't know, but it's like, what is grace? It is what Noah was. And what was Noah? Noah was righteous. He sought after the Lord. One of the words commonly translated for grace is also favor, and I think favor is pretty accurate, actually. Favor etymologically would be related to like yearning or longing for, and I think that actually matches up with what grace is. So like Noah yearned and longed for God, and God in return yearned and longed for Noah, because it's that NH Noah and HN grace. It's almost like what Noah was to God, God was to Noah. Okay, that's the way I'm thinking about it. So it's like Noah favored God, God favored Noah to a degree. I don't know if that makes sense, but yeah. The next one is really interesting. This is kind of just throwing it in. It's not part of a category, but the word for ark, as in the Ark of the Covenant. So there's two words for ark. It's like the Ark of the Covenant is one thing, and the boat that like Noah's Ark is a different thing. So Noah's Ark and the little boat that baby Moses was in are the same word, and they it's like a box, but it's more like a boat type thing, but it's still a wood box, right? Now the ark, as in the Ark of the Covenant, is a different word that is more related to like a coffer, like a coffin, almost like what you put a body in. But both Noah's Ark and the Ark of the Covenant are both boxes, but the two words used are two different words. So the word for Ark of the Covenant is actually the last verse in Genesis. It's the thing that they put Joseph in. It's a coffin, a sarcophagus, okay? So they put Joseph in a coffin, and that same word is then used to describe what they put the covenant in for the Ark of the Covenant. So it's a coffin, right? Which is really, it's just really interesting because they had the book of the covenant. The covenant was broken, so they put the broken covenant tablets in a coffin, like they buried it, like they're gonna bury it like it's dead, and then they put the book of the law outside of the ark as a testimony against the book of the covenant. And so it's almost like you bury someone and you put up a little sign outside of their thing. There's like, they were killed by so-and-so, blah, 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 like a testament of whatever. But then what they did with the ark is that they sprinkled blood on the ark, and blood conveys life, right? So they're sprinkling life on this coffin. It's like, I'm not sure, like I'm trying to think about it. It's like putting myself in their shoes, like in some sense it makes sense. Like blood is life, right? And I'm sprinkling blood on this covenant that's dead, right? It's a broken covenant, but the life keeps it going, sort of. You're like keeping it going. So it's like the old covenant, almost right off the bat, was sort of like on life support, right? And then this kind of gets you thinking, and I got this from I'll have to remember his name. Once I remember his name, I'll tag him in the video. But Jesus's tomb, where Jesus is buried, he was on a slab, and there was two angels on either side, just like the mercy seat, the covering of the Ark of the Covenant, and his blood was sprinkled on the covered thing between the angels. So it's sort of evocative of that image of when they would sprinkle blood on the ark. But anyway, the Ark of the Covenant was a coffin. All right, so that's very interesting. And likewise, Noah's Ark is very much related to that. And you could kind of think of, this is sort of a rabbit trail, but you could kind of think of that ark as a coffin as well, where it's like, then you're thinking, how was Noah saved? Noah was saved by entering in a coffin, and he rose. It was almost like they willingly went in a coffin, and they survived because they were in that coffin, because they died. If you die before you die, you won't die, kind of thing. If you die before you die, then you'll be raised. Noah goes in a coffin because of that. Everyone else dies around him, but he's raised up because he went in the coffin beforehand, so he died to himself, and he was raised up, he was saved. Kind of interesting. The last three are just kind of basic. It's just the classic spirit, soul, body thing. I just find it interesting because we used to use the word ghost for spirit, and people are like, oh, we don't use ghost anymore because it ghost came to mean like boo, like a little white sheet kind of entity in your house or something. Yeah, well, that's what a spirit is, right? It's like, I don't really see any problem with that. Like, if you see a ghost, you've seen a spirit. Isn't that the same thing? Like, the only difference is like, okay, let me back up a little bit. One interesting verse about the soul is way back in, I think, Exodus or Leviticus, I forget which one. It says you can't drink, or you can't spill blood, because the life is in the blood. The life is in the blood. Actually, it says the soul is in the blood. I found that to be very interesting. It's like the flesh is basically, the soul is the uniting point between spirit and flesh, and it's saying that like the meeting point of the soul and the flesh is like in the blood, sort of. So I haven't really thought through that a ton yet, but I just find that very interesting. It's not the life is in the blood, it's the soul is in the blood, and then the spirit is something else. Okay. Yeah, so I actually think ghost is a much more evocative word for English speakers. I think it probably is more accurate because the connotation there is that everyone has a ghost. Like, if you give up the ghost, your spirit is leaving your body, right? So it's like that Casper thing where if I die, Casper comes out, my Casper comes out and like floats around. That seems to be sort of accurate. So I don't know why it would be wrong to use the word ghost. So you could even say, peace be with you, and also with your ghost. So anyway, oh, and by the way, like, your ghost then is the thing that is resurrected. That's like your incorruptible body. So Jesus defeated spiritual death. So when Adam and Eve left the garden, they died spiritually, right? They were severed spiritually. And then Jesus, you put on the tent not made by hands, which is a new spirit, or revitalized spirit, because the Holy Spirit mingles with your spirit. Sorry, the Holy Ghost mingles with your ghost. Yeah. So anyway, I think that the Holy Ghost mingles with your ghost, and that's your incorruptible body. I think that's what Paul talks about when he's talking about the resurrection. Anyway, that's it for now. The Bible in plain English. I'm still thinking about this and working on this. I've done a lot of like looking up online to see if like anyone else has been working on this, and it's like there's a bunch of projects. The Modern Literal Version is one. The Concordant translation is another one. Those are basically the big two. They seem to be focused a lot on, like, for every Hebrew and Greek word, they're just going to have one or maybe two English words for that, and then you let the context decide. Then you let the context explain what the words really mean exactly. That just makes sense to me, because people will say, oh, context changes the nuance of meaning, so we have to have 12 different, translations for one Hebrew word. And it's like, if context changes the meaning, then just have one word and let context change the meaning. How is that different? I mean, it's either you let the reader change the meaning in their own mind, or you have an expert change it for them. I just don't really see much of a difference there, except it seems preferable to let the reader determine the meaning. Kind of don't treat them like they're stupid, but yeah, part of this is me just also thinking, because a lot of these like concordant translation will still use words like forgive instead of bear. They'll still use words like atonement. I think they still use atonement. And I would like combine. So my dream Bible translation would be a combination of the concordant style, but you're also cross-referencing the Greek New Testament with the Greek LXX, and you're double-checking things there, and then you're also using plain English words. So, for example, another example that I forgot about is baptize. Now, a lot of Protestant translations of the Bible will use the word immerse. They're like, oh, we got to get rid of the Catholic word. It's just immerse. But it's like, actually, it's dip. You're dipping someone or something in some liquid. In the Old Testament, there's a bunch of instances of this word dip, and it's super interesting. You dip something. I think the first time it was used maybe was Joseph or Joseph's brothers dipping his robe in blood. And then in Revelation, it talks about Jesus has a robe dipped in blood. And if you use like the modern English kind of equivalent word, it'd be they baptized the robe in blood, right? So there's a lot of instances of dip, and if you have it consistent across the Old and New Testament, it's very mentally evocative of a concept, and it allows you to connect concepts together that you would have missed normally. Yeah, and that just it reminds me of like the kind of mission that James Jordan was on when he did Through New Eyes. He wrote that book Through New Eyes, and it reminds me of Elias Molee when he was working on his constructed language Teutonish. His part of his big concept was you start with base root simple concepts and you build up from there, right? So you combine the word arm and you combine the word bone, and you get with the word bone and you get arm bone, right? It's a very evocative kind of word because we know what arm is and we know what bone is. If you combine them together, we know exactly what you're talking about. Expiate, no clue. Atone, no clue. The problem with using all these words like iniquity, it allows people to put ideas in your mind. You're going to ask some expert, what does iniquity mean? And they are going to explain it to you. If you just saw the word crookedness in the Bible and you saw all the places it was used, it would be much more clear to you what it meant just from the context of how it was used, So anyway, that's it for now. Later.